Bartlett will have the football. He'll have the edge. He'll cut up over the 40, and he tumbles forward down near the 45, and the Pirates will have a first down. Jones takes the snap, drops straight back, looking to throw. Pressure is applied, and there's a sack. Bernard Century bringing him down right around the 40-yard line. They'll actually give him a couple of yard gain on that. Good pressure from the Pirate front. It's to Gilpin. Gilpin will take the snap. They'll hand to Ty Sigway, and he finds a little bit of a crease into Cowboy territory inside the 40 to the 38. The near side here. There's the snap. Gomez looking to throw. Got plenty of time, flips it to Dugan Sexton for a completion at the 44 and a Pirate first down. Gomez drops straight back looking that way, and then looks back the other way and hits Austin Castilleja at the 20 for a first down, and he pulls his way a little bit more down to about the 18-yard line. It'll be 1st and 10 Pirates. On the near side, they'll bring the receiver on the far side and fake to him. That's Moore. Gomez keeps it in for the score on the left side of the formation, and the Pirates are on the board with 8:33 remaining in the third period.
An easy thing to do. That's a stretch goal, but it's certainly realistic, and so that's what we've been working on. And hopefully the good weeks of practices that we've had, even the experiences with bad practices, hopefully this will all be leading into some really good things. I mean, it was a rough week last week, but the week before we almost beat a top 25 team. So the sky's not falling. It was a tough matchup for us, missing a lot of guys. We're ready to move on and give Austin College a really good effort.
Well, and we've talked about it numerous times on the show. This is a tough conference, week in, week out.
Is it?
Yes, it is very tough. Week in, week out, Coach, you know, you could be against – it doesn't matter whom it is. It's it's going to be a tough outing week in, week out. And so this past weekend was no different. It was on the road. There were a little bit of problems. So, you know, but we moved forward, correct? So let's talk a little bit about just – this conference in general, because I think there's a lot of value to being a participant in this conference. I mean, you get some exposure. Recruits that are being recruited for other teams are also looking at Southwestern week in and week out. So an example would be last week, not this past game, but the week before, we played Howard Payne, very close game. Any recruits that were looking at Howard Payne may also now be interested in Southwestern University. So talk a little bit about being in this conference and what benefit it can provide to recruiting and building a program.
Well, I think all those things you said are certainly true. It's a big challenge week in and week out. What we market in recruiting is how different we are as an institution. We're the Vanderbilt of the SEC. We're the Stanford of the Pac-12, the Northwestern of the Big Ten. Forbes lists 660 schools a year. We're the only school, now Austin's joined as affiliate too, but before Austin coming in, we're the only school that's even listed in their 660. And of course, we're ranked pretty darn high. We're in the top 100 private schools almost every year. So that is our niche, is we're the best academic school and the best football conference in the country. What's unique about us is we play a lot of schools that we are not recruiting the same players. Not even close.
Okay.
For example, there's not a whole lot of crossover between the Howard Payne recruiting and our recruiting. We're not going for the same players, which is both good and bad. Our pool is quite a bit smaller, but to a certain extent, there's not always as many folks knocking on the door from Texas. Now, with that said, all the academic schools from outside of Texas want to come grab some Texas players, and every now and then there's some that want to go do that. So there's certainly plenty of suitors for all the players that we're looking for, but The thing that we've always tried to differentiate ourselves with in this conference is that we're pretty darn unique from an outcome standpoint with our placement rate. Our career services is third in the entire nation. We've been ranked as high as eighth in the nation in job placement. So those are the differences and the things that we like to stress about coming and playing at Southwestern versus going and playing at some of the other schools.
Well, and, I've mentioned it before in the recruiting process. I sat through a little bit of that process with my nephew, and there are quite a few benefits of attending Southwestern University beyond a budding football program, and that those are centered around academics. Talk a little bit about that and what you tell the recruits in case one happens to be watching right now.
Well, it's a lot of the same things we kind of talked about. Is what you can expect at Southwestern is that you're going to get a great education. It's going to have great outcomes. Reagan's sitting over there. She's 6. She's not looking at colleges yet, but I've done this enough to know I'm looking past the fluffy rankings. Everyone wants to have their rankings, and I'm looking at outcomes. I'm looking at the school's placement rate. I'm looking at their career services. I'm looking at, what am I going to get out of this investment if she's going to go to college. Hopefully she's going to have a real estate empire I can hand off to her in a few years, and she can go a little bit of the non-traditional route. That's what we're working on. But that's what parents can expect with Southwestern is that our outcomes are unbelievable. You're going to have as great of an opportunity to launch your career playing at Southwestern than you are arguably a lot of places. Again, third in the nation in career services, which is getting into grad school. We have almost 100% placement into first-choice grad schools. It's getting jobs. It's all the internships. And if you want to study things like business and anything in healthcare, where other than Austin and the Austin Metro would you want to do that? I mean, maybe Dallas or Houston or San Antonio, right? But the big cities in Texas are kind of where it's at right now with growth. And so we're connected to Austin, but we're not in downtown. I always tell the parents, as being a parent myself and the head coach, I like that our guys don't walk out of their dorm onto 6th Street.
Yeah, it's a little shady down there.
I'm sure they can find it, but they have to try to find it. So the balance of life here is really good. Our players are never bored in Georgetown. I mean, you go right up to the corner here at 29 University. There's 7 chicken restaurants in this one little area. There's plenty to do, but it's a really good balance of life, I think.
Well, and there's a little bit of a misconception that Southwestern may be financially out of reach. And, we've talked to a couple of administrators after the show from time to time about it. And that's really a misnomer because there is a lot of available assistance for student athletes or just students in general at Southwestern University. So do you have anything to say about that? Nope. Okay. Well, I've been told it's true, and I know for a fact that my nephew has received some aid.
Well, certainly. 98 or 99% every year receives some sort of financial assistance. Our scholarship grid is now available online. You can kind of see your class rank, GPA, and what your academic scholarships will be. And then, of course, we do have other need-based and merit-based aid available.
Excellent. Well, we'll take a quick break here on SU Football Weekly, presented by the Sheraton Austin Georgetown Hotel and Conference Center, and we will be right back in a moment for segment 2. Welcome back to SU Football Weekly, presented by the Sheraton Austin Georgetown Hotel and Conference Center. That's my mess up there as a production and host. It's a little bit tough when you got to do 2 jobs. You know a little bit about that as a wide receiver for Southwestern University. Everyone, this is Cam Collins, a senior wide receiver on the football squad. Let's hear it for him real quick. Thank you for joining us, Cam.
Sir.
You know a little bit about that because as a wide receiver, sometimes you got to come across that line of scrimmage and carry a football occasionally on those jet sweeps. Give us your thoughts on the Southwestern offense, how you feel about it as a wide receiver, and you got a pretty talented group of guys you split time with. Talk about those guys as well.
Yes, sir, absolutely. I would say that we definitely have been dynamic over my 4 years here. We've had to change year to year based on just personnel things, and we always kind of cater to the guys that we have, and I think that's really unique, and I appreciate it. And, yeah, we have a really talented offensive room and receiver core, and I love those guys. The ones that came before me who taught me everything I know. I came in as a quarterback, so I had to learn this new position, and there were guys like Anthony Stevens, Blair Orr, Max Patton that really poured into me and taught me how to play the position. And now I get to kind of do that for younger guys that are coming in and finding their role on our team. And, yeah, we have a lot of responsibility blocking out there, carrying the ball, and getting in windows for our quarterbacks. And it's an exciting position to play, but we have to carry some workload for sure.
Expand a little bit more on being a senior in that group and, you know, having some younger guys that you mentor along the way, kind of like you just mentioned was done for you. Talk about that a little bit more.
Yes, sir. I'll definitely say that just one little story to share. I was 17, the number 17 when I got here, and was that number for 3 years. And now we have a freshman quarterback, Travis, that is number 17, and he got moved over to receiver also. And I watched him run a route for the first time and catch a ball, and it was just like it was like deja vu, seeing myself out there.
Like you're watching film or
yes,
something.
Sir, yeah, like I just rolled back time, and I went up to him after, and I was like, dude, like, you are me. It was pretty funny. But, yeah, just to be in a position that I feel like, for the most part, in work ethic and time management, I've learned a lot, and I have a lot to share. And so any way that I get to interact with these younger guys and just teach them the things that have worked for me and have put me in a position to succeed, I want to share that with them so that I see them be the best men and best athletes that they can be at Southwestern and beyond.
Well, oftentimes a football player will want to remain in a position that they're accustomed to, like you played quarterback in high school, but you find yourself a receiver now. Talk about that experience and the commitment to the team concept where, you know, sometimes you might need to change a position to contribute even better to the team or potentially even just get on the field sometimes. Talk about that a little bit, and how do you relay that to guys like Travis?
Yes, sir. It's definitely interesting coming in to college football. I think for most guys across the board, D1, D2, D3, NAIA, you come in as the guy from your high school that, you were probably the star, you were the stud, and everybody's saying, you're great and you're going to do big things. And then you come to a new place and you have to figure out what your role is, and it's likely different than what it was in the past. And so you have to be prepared to be fluid with what the team needs from you. You have to be prepared to work and learn in this new position. And, I would definitely say that for me specifically, we had a couple of receivers go down. We had Fred Hover, a great senior quarterback. And so when Coach Austin asked me to move over to wide receiver, I said, absolutely, I'll do whatever's needed from me to be on the field and to help this team. And so that was just kind of the mentality I had, to be determined to just help in any way that I could.
That's a great attitude to take into that situation. Football always says it's a microcosm of life. You can learn a lot of things from football that you can apply in your life later on working in a team. But one of those things is to be able to manage and deal with change. Oftentimes people don't like to deal with change, and it's a good way for you to learn that in a safe setting. So talk about being a student athlete at Southwestern. A lot of people are student athletes. They become pretty good at a sport in high school, and they find a niche somewhere in college, whether it's D1, D2, D3. But very few colleges have the same standards as Southwestern, regardless of your athletic status. You know, they treat all the students the same. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes, sir. I can definitely attest to the challenges that come with it. For myself and Bernard, that y'all will hear later, we have dreams of healthcare professions, and so that means taking the hard organic chemistries and biochemistries and biologies, and that's difficult, and it requires a lot of time placed into your academics after you're tired, after practice, and before the workout, and knowing that you got to study for the test, but you also have to be up for the 6 a.m. workout or 6 a.m. practice. And so time management is definitely a big deal for being a student athlete at Southwestern. I will say, though, that our faculty is awesome. We have some great STEM program professors that want to see us succeed for sure. And so the classes are difficult for sure, without a doubt, but they are on our side, and they want to help us. And when things are tough, they're in our corner, and we can reach out to them. And I love that it's a small student body, because I know my teachers and they know me. They know my name. They know my parents' professions and things like that. You don't get at a bigger place that you aren't so well known.
That is the benefit of a smaller institution like Southwestern University. Now, you kind of mentioned it already, but I always ask all of the athletes I talk to, what's your major?
Yes, sir. I'm a biology major.
Biology?
Yes, sir.
So are you thinking you're going to go into nursing? You want to be a doctor? I mean, what are you looking at?
I would. My dream is to be a pediatrician, and so I'm going to graduate in December of this year and work for a hospital back in Houston, and try to build up that resume and get into a good medical school and pursue that dream of pediatrics.
Do you have any in mind?
I'm from Dickinson, Texas. It's about 20 minutes north of Galveston, and so UTMB Galveston would just be it would be awesome, mostly to save money, because medical school is not cheap, and my parents still live there, and so I could commute and save a little money. So that would be ideal right now.
Well, being from that area of the state, how much fishing do you do when you're back in Galveston?
Man, I'll say that I got a little bit burnt out of fishing by the age of like 10, because my grandpa was a charter captain and my dad loves it just as much, and I have 2 older brothers and they both love it as well. So we went on a lot of fishing trips growing up, and so I kind of got bored, and me and Mom would end up just playing cards or something, or just finding some other activity, because I'll go, but it got a little boring.
I love to fish for redfish.
Oh yeah.
So that's good stuff.
Yes,
All right, Cam. Well, I appreciate you coming on tonight.
Thank you, sir.
We'll be right back on SU Football Weekly, presented by the Sheraton Austin Georgetown Hotel and Conference Center. We'll get it right. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the SU Football Weekly, presented by Sheraton Austin Georgetown Hotel and Conference Center. I had gotten that down over the last couple of shows, and for some reason I'm stumbling through it this evening. Joining me now is Jason Lund, a sophomore defensive end for the Southwestern University Pirates. How are you this evening, Jason?
I'm doing great. Just got done hearing Cameron Collinsfeld, one of my teammates, speak, and he did a great job. Trying to follow that up.
Yeah, sometimes you've got to follow the supreme act, and he did very well, but I think you'll be fine. We'll talk first about statistics. You're number 6 on the team in tackles, which is pretty impressive for a defensive lineman because you're usually shedding one or two blocks at a time. Talk about what it's like to play on the defensive line in this conference specifically.
Well, being a defensive lineman is definitely a big challenge because you can look at me. I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but I like to hang my hat, my effort and my just energy, ability, always going out there like 110%. And especially, like you said, in this conference, there's some big old boys I have to go against. Seriously, kudos to Hardin Simmons. They were a pretty rough line. I like to say I'm a pretty aggressive dude, like especially when I'm out there, great with my hands. But that was a tough challenge. But I just go out there and I really try to give it my best every single time. And you just got to be physical. That's really what it is. You got to be physical, got to be good with your hands, and you always got to know your assignment. And I did not know I was 6 in tackles to be a –
Well, that's according to the Southwestern University site, and so that to me that would be official statistics. So, talk about how tired you can get in a football game pushing against those 320-pound guys on a regular basis for the entire game. Oftentimes you may find yourself on the field for an 8-play drive or something like that, and talk about that a little bit, how tired you can get.
I mean, definitely pushing on those dudes every single time. Like, you've got to come out the whistle, step, punch, and then find the ball. And it's always full tilt, running down the fourth. You got to run lateral, run backwards. If the play's broke, it gets tough. Like, especially when they drag it out for those long 10, 12-play drives. Like, that's really when it starts getting intense. We've been so I always try to work on my conditioning. And we've been rotating a lot more because we've got a great group of D linemen.
Yes,
love the dudes I go to work with. A very deep group. And despite me being one of the younger groups, I try to always be a leader and try to show, like, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Show leadership, and whether it's, like, running off the field when we're rotating and just always getting first to drills because we have to work our conditioning consistently throughout the season because it gets
for those long drives.
Very deep running that long.
Okay, so talk about, you just mentioned them briefly, but talk about your D-line group. Coach Austin has mentioned in previous shows that he felt like it's one of the strengths of the team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. It's deep, and you've got some older guys as well. You're one of the younger ones, but talk about the group.
I mean, we definitely got a solid group. There's Nick Hackett. He's been holding down the defensive tackle, nose guard position for a few years. Noah Clarkson, Edmundo Suarez, 33. Y'all probably hear his dad on the sidelines if you're out there. And we got just a bunch of group of guys, and I love going to work with them. Very energetic group, and we like to hang our hat on that we're just we're going to be the most physical and fastest group out there. Like, as defensive linemen, you got to be hungry, and we try to go out there every single day hungry, always working on what we can do.
Well, playing on a defensive end position, sometimes teams will run a counter your direction and may bring a guard or a tackle that direction and try to, surprise you a little bit. Talk about that, both when you didn't see them coming and the times that you do. How do you deal with that?
That is the last thing you want to see.
No.
Not looking, not having your eyes in the right position, and that big old, just like we were talking, 250, 300-pound guard, bam, usually not ending good. It's usually on your backside if you're not seeing. But luckily I've got great coaches, and I've learned through just being a defensive end and being working on my craft over and over. Eyes are some of the most important part of the game. You really have to look at your keys and know where you're looking for your assignments. So if I'm following that and I see that guard or tackle coming to kick me out or H-back, you have to spill underneath it and then get your eyes back on the ball and try to help out my teammates any way I can, try to get the ball down.
Now, in the times when your eyes were in the wrong position and you happened to be, we'll just say, blocked by one of those guards, how does that look on film, and do your teammates rib you a little bit about that? During film study?
Definitely. Personally, it's definitely first clip they'll show because it's usually, if you're getting pancaked and not looking at your gap, it's usually not a good play to start with. But personally, if that ever happens to me, I'm trying to get up, like, get up as quick as I can, make it look like it didn't happen. But no, it's definitely ribbon. You hear a lot from your teammates. You make one little mistake. If it's on the film catches everything. You can't hide anything.
Tell the Truth Tuesday is what it was called.
Good, the bad, the ugly.
By one of the
Kelseys.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about education now. You're a student athlete at Southwestern. I ask everyone the same question. Talk about your experience as a student athlete at Southwestern University.
My experience as a student athlete, the first semester, freshman year entirely, was still battling with COVID a lot, so it was mostly online classes and having to meet my teachers for virtual meet and greets, and I'm a very in-person kind of guy, so this semester has been a lot better, being able to go back in class regardless wearing masks or not. Like, it's just great to have a connection with your teachers because the classrooms aren't very big, and you're with a small group of students because we're not the biggest university in the world, so it's really nice being able to talk to everybody, but it's a process. Like, you really got to get used to it. I came in not 100% like ready to go for school, and Southwestern shapes you up really quick. You got to take the books very seriously.
Well, and they want to keep you around. So, some of the bigger universities, the freshman classes are upwards of 400 to 600 people in a class. And so you're just another number in a class like that. It's not the same here at Southwestern. You just mentioned it. You can build relationships with your professors. And that goes a really long way to being successful in your education. Give us your thoughts on that.
Being able to, I'm sorry.
Well, that's all right. I went to a small university as well. I went to Concordia. And so when I struggled in my upper math classes like calculus, I would spend a lot of time in my professor's office. And fortunately for me, he was a Cowboys fan. So, we had something to talk about back in the mid-'90s. So that's what I'm referring to. Talk about that a little bit.
For sure. Funny enough, I came back from calculus office hours today. So
it's a tough class.
Oh, yeah, very tough. But no, all the teachers here are very open, whether it's virtual office hours, meeting them for an hour. It's usually just typically you and whoever else comes and the teacher, and you can sit down and talk to them about anything. Like today I got to go over one of my first exams that I took with my teacher, and she broke down everything for me, and I was able to have a really solid one-to-one conversation with her. That way I could understand the topic, and I feel a lot better about calculus now. That first week coming in, that's when we took the quiz. It was a redo from that. So
it's an eye-opener, right?
Yes, definitely an eye-opener. So having that personal connection with your teachers and classmates it's a great thing to have.
Well, you're in calculus, so you're obviously in a tough major. Let's talk about your major. What is that, and what are your plans for life?
My major right now is still actually undecided. I still have a little bit of time, but I'm leaning towards either a kinesiology major and I think I'm going to get a minor in business.
So are you considering becoming a football coach?
It's always been a thought process. That's always an option for me because you love the game,
right.
Super passionate about the game. Wouldn't trade it up for a second. Love being out there. But I've also thought about being a physical therapist. I love helping people, and I've had multiple injuries myself where it's incredible what they can do. You could go in there, and it seems repetitive doing bands or standing 1 foot on a ball, and you're throwing something at a wall trying to keep balance. But then 3 weeks later, when your shoulder's not hurting anymore, it's fantastic. It's remarkable. So that's another thing I've looked at. And like Coach Austin was talking about, all the grad school programs and that Southwestern has, physical therapy would be an easy lean into going to school here.
Well, and it is also another avenue to stay around the sport. I always say to folks, when your career ends, you don't have to be away from the sport. I mean, there are a number of ways that you can contribute to that next generation of players. And, you mentioned some of the older guys being there for you. Talk about your plans going forward for that next incoming class of freshmen. I mean, you've already, as a sophomore, spent a lot of time on the field, which doesn't always happen to guys. Sometimes they have to work their way into being an upperclassman before they find much playing time.
Personally, for me, that was a thing Coach Kriesel told me, our defensive coordinator, in our recruiting meeting. He said, well, Jason, I loved your film, love how you play. If you can bring everything you bring on your tape and what you're talking to me right now about, then you have the opportunity to play over some guys and even come in and compete. And that's me to the core. I love competing. I love working. So I feel like me having the playtime I had has just been a testament to my ability to compete and love the game I have. And my advice for those younger guys coming up is just nothing's guaranteed. Like, you have to always work for it. Spend those later nights in the gym, get extra reps in your craft, work on agility during Christmas when football season's months out. You just have to continue working on your craft. Nose on the grindstone.
So don't sit around and eat sugar cookies during your Christmas break. You should actually be working out.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Even as hard as it is. Halloween coming up, too.
I know. That's a tough one for me.
You got to stay
I love
on
chocolate.
You got to stay on the weights.
Well, appreciate you coming on the show tonight, Jason. You did a great job.
For having me.
We'll be right back on SU Football Weekly, presented by the Sheraton Austin Georgetown Hotel and Conference Center. Stay tuned. Welcome back to SU Football Weekly, presented by the Sheraton Austin Georgetown Hotel and Conference Center. Joining me now is Bernard Century, number 36, everyone. How are you this evening, Bernard?
I'm doing great. I'm so thankful to have me out here.
Excellent.
So
we love to have you. We get to call your name often. In fact, Jason was surprised that he was, in the top 6 in tackles, but you're probably not as surprised to know that you're tied for first on the team in tackles with one of last week's guests, Peyton Ludeman.
Very much so. I think he robbed me a couple of those tackles, but we can talk about
Well, I don't get to keep those official stats, though. So, and occasionally I will call a different individual than Bernard if he's making the tackle. But that's usually because you're on the very bottom of the pile, and I might see Jason's number there on the side. So, talk about being a leader on the defense, because especially in the run game. You're a real impact player for the Pirates defense. Talk about your role as a linebacker and how you approach it.
Yes, sir. I am the only senior linebacker right now, and I didn't know really how to fill the footsteps of guys like Hayden Smith, Chris Crawford coming in. They did teach me a lot, not necessarily physical aspects of the game, but more mental aspects. Things you say, things you do, people will react in a certain manner, and you just have to carry yourself with a certain stature in order to let everyone know that, hey, like, we are the linebackers, we are the defense, and we need to dominate every single play, every single game, regardless of the outcome, regardless of what anyone else thinks. Just do what we need to do. And so, as a leader, early on in my career, I was not a very vocal leader, and I've told Coach Austin through our meetings that I've been trying to become a lot more vocal in my leadership role on the team, and I'm trying. I hope I'm doing a little better than I have been, but I always know that my athletic ability has been one of my biggest aspects in terms of leadership for this team, and so with that and increasing my vocal leadership skills, I believe that I'm doing an okay job, I guess, for our defense. But it's such an honor, though, to be considered a leader on this team. Such a great team that fights till every second, till every whistle, and I don't know. I embrace it every single day, and I love just being considered a leader on this team.
Well, and you just mentioned your athleticism, and a lot of high school athletes are pretty athletic in high school, but once you get into college, very few of those athletes get to translate, even get an opportunity to play in college. Talk about the difference in playing where in a high school level where you may be quite dominant to, coming up to a college level where the competition's quite a bit stiffer.
Oh yeah. So high school, man, team MVP for my junior and senior year. It almost seemed like the teams that I played against and that I really dominated in those games, it was just purely because of athleticism. It wasn't me making a great read or anything or recognizing a play beforehand. It was me just using my athleticism to make plays. And I didn't really think about that coming into college, but my very first collegiate play, I was on kickoff return, and we played Denison. And their starting linebacker came straight up to me to block me, and I got thrown on my butt, just straight up. Like it was a wake-up call. It really was. And at that point, I was like, these guys can ball. Like everyone can ball. Like the only difference between D3 and D1 is the size. At this point,
I agree with that. And oftentimes they're not as intelligent of players as you come across in D3.
Not at all. But man, just being just physicality can only go so far, and football is 80% mental, 20% physical. You just have to roll with all the punches that come through college football, because it's a whole nother, any collegiate sport really, it's a whole nother step up, and there's only so many players that can go from the high school to collegiate level and be successful in their mental and physical game.
Well, and the speed of really any game, but football especially, it jumps up as you move each level up. And, when you go from sub-varsity in high school to varsity, it's a big jump in the way, the speed that the game is played. And it's the same going into college, in my opinion. So with that in mind, playing linebacker and knowing that a lot more of it's mental, how do you make those reads and make them so quickly to fill the hole?
Well, you probably say that this year, not the years before. But earlier in my career, I was in high school. We were akin to reading guards and whatnot, but I was not the best at it, not as nearly as I am right now. There was a point in time where I was being considered moving to DN because I could not read guards to save the team at all. And so Jason was mentioning earlier, like it's not what you see, like it's not what you do necessarily during practice, but it's all the off-season stuff. Like even when you're about to go to bed, like I would imagine like pulling guards and taking my first step, like just with no hesitation, and just trusting myself and trusting in my nose guards, Noah Clarkson, Nick Hackett, to be able to open that gap for me so I can run through when I see a guard pull too. Like that's one of the things that I'm honestly so thankful for on my team. But just reading keys, like it's just second nature. I feel like it's more mental, like I said before, than physical in terms of reading keys, because now it's just I can think about it before the play even happens and just react accordingly.
Well, I'll give you an opportunity to give those defensive linemen a little bit of credit, because if it's not for them, then you're fighting off a blocker too. Talk about how important, especially those inside guys, to eat up blocks so that you can flow to the play.
Most definitely. Noah Clarkson, Nick Hackett, those guys will literally hold two guys that are trying to come to me just so I can run through freely, and it's the most amazing feeling. Like without them, I wouldn't be tied for number one tackler on the team, and without them, we wouldn't have a run game, right, in general.
Okay, well, let's talk about your linebacker group. You mentioned you're the only senior linebacker, and you've really been working on your leadership skills over the last few years. Talk about what you tell the young guys, Blaine Corkin, who's also been on the show earlier in this year, somebody like that. How do you bring them along and get them prepared to deal with the mental aspects as well as the physical rigors of being a college football player?
So I let them know, like I've said before, that we are linebackers and we have to play like crazed dogs on the field, and we have to bring the energy every single game, every single practice, just at everything we do, because people will look at us and react accordingly. And as a linebacker, you're a leader on the defense. You have to make sure you're saying things that will be positive, a positive reflection on everybody. But also, you have to make sure that you check in with players and see, like, hey, like, is there a reason why you're not as energetic as you were last practice, and solve those issues accordingly if you can, because Coach Austin says it all the time, CI, constant improvement. We have to make sure we're locked in on football when we're in football, because that's how it translates in the game. That's how it should translate in practice, the game, and furthermore and so forth.
Well, being a student at a very difficult academic school, sometimes it's not football that's a distraction. Sometimes it is, classwork, or maybe they, I always dreaded my calculus exams, to go back to our conversation with Jason. But give me your thoughts on that, on the importance of bringing those guys out and being focused on football during football, and then helping them along academically during the time you're not focused on football.
Most definitely. There have been so many times in season practice where my mind goes to the test I have that night. It goes into like biochem or organic chemistry. And I definitely try to make sure that my body language does not express the frustration or say that, hey, like, I'm thinking, my mind's all over the place.
I've got an assignment due.
Yeah, exactly. and those things definitely cross my mind. I'm consider myself a very studious person. I think about that all the time. But I definitely try not to make sure that everyone else isn't talking about those tests and whatnot they have coming up, and just to make sure that they're all focused on what we need to focus on, which is football. And there are other things in life too, life in general, that crosses your mind.
Family, friends.
Exactly. So I think it's important as a leader to be in touch with my fellow linebackers, fellow defenders, team in general, as to what they are going through on a daily basis, and to make sure that, guys, we are a family, and we need to deal with those things as a family. And you have people you can rely on, you have people you can lean back on in order to make sure you get through those struggles, and have a positive outcome at the end of the day.
Well, and you mentioned family and your team in the same breath, and so really you build a lot of good relationships in the sport of football. These are guys that are, basically going into battle with you, not to use a military reference. It's often used in football. But, talk about the importance of building those relationships, and not just with linebackers, but with your D linemen in the secondary, and the guys on offense, and the coaches, and all of that. Give us your thoughts on that.
I think it's easy to forget that you only get to experience something like this once in a lifetime. Being around of a group of guys who you call your brothers, and belonging to something that's a lot bigger than yourself. And once I start to remember that, because I'm a senior, and I think about, like, what am I going to do without football? Like, without this camaraderie, without having guys to cry with and to bleed with, and And so it's just I just try to remember that there's only so much time in my athletic career that I have, and just embrace every single second of it as I can.
So what's your major?
Psychology. I'm going pre-med too. So
Are you on pace to graduate on time?
yes, sir, I am. Yes,
You
sir.
are. So you're not looking to add a few classes and maybe come back for another semester?
That's the question.
You're considering it, because
I am very much so.
well, and I don't blame you, because you just mentioned you've probably expressed it better than anyone in the situation that you're in. Most people don't realize that end of strapping up the shoulder pads and snapping that helmet and going out there and into battle with your brothers, it ends pretty quickly. It's always sudden to just about everyone, but you seem to have a little bit of a handle on the fact that it is coming to a close for you. What are your life plans beyond football?
So life plans, studying for MCAT, get all those affairs in order. That way I can go to med school on time. I do plan on taking a gap year, which in that time I could either take more classes, build up my resume and whatnot. And staying for another year and taking classes at Southwestern is definitely something that's been plaguing my mind for the longest time. So I think
I think you'd be welcomed back.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
So, are you planning on becoming a doctor? Is that what I'm
Yes.
hearing you say?
That's yes.
And do you have a field of specialty that you're interested in?
So at the moment, it's psychiatry. I definitely
you
go to
just
med
said
school.
that.
Yeah.
Hello.
I definitely go to med school for sure. But I know once I get there, I'll have many experiences that could change my mind, in a sense. But I love helping people hands-on and being able to see the progress, right, from someone being sad to someone being happy, and also seeing their family become happy at the end of the day. That's just, I don't know. I get a lot of joy from that, and I feel like that joy in itself will keep me going for the rest of my life. And it's something that to me is similar in football, like to see progress in the group that you've been with for so long. Just going into something that's bigger than yourself, basically. Just doing something that will help everyone else, but also leaving a mark in terms of football, leaving a mark at the end of the day and saying, hey, I'm making this team better for this reason.
Well, there's a lot of silly things that people can be proud of, and what you've just described is not one of those things. That is something that is a genuine reason to express pride in, whether they're your teammates that you see them grow and mature and become better, or yourself. So I want to thank you for coming on the show, Bernard. You did a great job tonight. So we'll be right back on SU Football Weekly, presented by the Sheraton Austin Georgetown Hotel and Conference Center. We'll be with Coach Austin to talk about the upcoming Austin College game. Welcome back to SU Football Weekly, presented by the Sheraton Austin Georgetown Hotel and Conference Center. I'm joined again by Coach Joe Austin. We get a round of applause for Coach Austin. Before we get into the Austin College Kangaroos, Coach, I want to mention our sponsors. They include Antioch Georgetown, Chapel Realty Group with Roger Chapel, Chick-fil-A, Chisholm Trail Pediatrics, CJ's Catering, Hewlett Chevrolet Buick Volkswagen, Double Dave's Pizza, Eagles Wings Home Services,
Jerome,
First Texas Bank, Gary Brown CPA, Georgetown Commercial Properties, Georgetown Shirt Company, Georgetown Title, Groove Line Productions, HEB, Hello Georgetown, John F. Lewis CPA, Mighty Fine, Minutemen Press, Waterboy Graphics, Primerica Financial Solutions with Derek McGill, Rawson Champion CPAs, Rudy's, St. David's, Georgetown Hospital, Schlotsky's, Sheraton Austin Georgetown Hotel and Conference Center. Everybody, that's where we're at now. Stephanie Featherstone State Farm, Upstream Investment Partners with Scott Olson, Whataburger, and Wolf Ranch, the corporate partners. Please, if you can, give business to those sponsors, as they do provide a valuable service to the Southwestern University Pirate football program. Okay, Coach, we've got Austin College, a new team in the conference. What can you tell us about the Kangaroos?
we've played them a lot. In fact, they're a part of our old conference, I guess the conference that most of our sports are still under. So we played them quite a bit. Our first conference win came against them. The last time we played them was 2016. We actually played them twice. And last time I played them was 35-0. It was a really fun game up there in Sherman because we clinched at least a tie of the conference championship. the next week we beat Trinity and clinched first all by ourselves. But we know them well. Their head coach has been there for quite a while. A lot of their assistant coaches have been there. So it's a team that we have quite a bit of familiarity with, even though we haven't played them since 2016.
Well, and it's an established program. They've had their football program going for a while. Give us your thoughts on their offense and what we can expect from them this week.
Well, they changed completely 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So they played about 4 or 5 games. Their first game was canceled. They played 4 games with one kind of offensive system. And then they switched kind of completely to a different one a couple weeks ago. So we'll have to prepare for either of the things that we could see and make sure our guys are thoroughly prepared. But they're a run-heavy offense. They do a lot of bootlegs. A lot of their passing success comes on bootlegs. Number 2 and number 5 are both brothers. One's a running back, one's a receiver. I should have their names memorized. Sorry, guys, if they're following. But their top runner and their top receiver are 2 seniors that are brothers, and they're very good players. And so they're getting better offensively throughout the season. They had their best couple offensive games last few weeks since they changed styles. Scored 30 points against East Texas Baptist last year, so they're definitely getting things going in the right direction this season.
So what kind of offense? You mentioned they run a lot of rollout, bootlegs, and things like that. But you say it's run heavy. Is it a pro set, or do they come out in a pistol or more of a spread offense?
Lately, they were not completely, but mostly under center early on in the season with a tight end and a fullback and 2 receivers, so more of a pro or a tight end slot type look. And then the last couple weeks, they've gone more of a spread. They've gone shotgun with split backs and 3 wide receivers. So they're not running all new plays out of it. It's running some of the same plays, but their alignments and their sets and some of their personnel has changed pretty dramatically.
So you kind of had a similar situation in preparation for Hardin-Simmons. You mentioned in that prior show that they also have 2 different style of offenses. Defenses, rather. I'm sorry, that you had to prepare for both. And so this is similar in that you're preparing for two styles of offense. Is that tougher to prepare for as a defense or as an offense?
Well, there's limitations in the amount of time that you have. So it's not that the defense or offense will have more trouble preparing for 2 systems. It's just the limitations that you have in time, the limitations in practice hours and meeting time. You just have to you get to see everything. You just get fewer repetitions looking at everything throughout the week.
Well, talk about their defense a little bit. You mentioned that their offense put 30 points on East Texas Baptist. Is that earlier this season, or was that last?
That was last weekend.
Last weekend. Okay. How many points did they give up in that game?
30. It was 37-30. Now, in fairness, 20 of their points came late in the fourth quarter, but they were their starters that they kept in, and they really started to play better at the end of the game. So they definitely, they should be feeling like that was their best offensive game, even if their points came really late. And they're kind of cosmetic scores more than making a difference in the outcome. But that was their best offensive game, no matter when the scores came. It was their best production.
But defensively, what can we expect from the Kangaroos?
I think we have a little bit better idea of how they're going to align. They're trying to be pretty multiple in their coverages. I think that is good for their personnel. And so they'll play each formation that we'll line up in a couple different ways. They'll have a couple different zone looks, and they'll have a man-to-man look. What they try to do with their front 6 in the box is they do a lot of slanting, twisting, and blitzing, and try to get exchange gaps and cause a lot of confusion for the offensive linemen. And that's kind of what they hang their hat on, is they try to stunt into a play. Every now and then they'll stunt out of a play, but it's kind of a little bit of a risk reward, and they're definitely going to move a lot. They're going to slant and twist and blitz and try to cause some havoc close to the football.
They do any of that pre-snap to try to throw you off, like come out in what looks like a man coverage and then drop into a zone, something like that?
They don't necessarily move their secondary a whole lot as far as disguising, but they'll have their linebackers and D linemen showing all kinds of different things, and then they may or may not rush the gaps that they show before the snap. Guys may drop and guys may cross and gap exchange. So it's more the interior 6 in the box than the back 5 or 6 in the defense.
So what do you tell your offensive linemen in preparation for a defense like that, where there's a lot of movement pre-snap?
Well, for us, all of our blocking schemes are rule-based.
Mm-hmm.
So you go where you're supposed to go, and if there's someone there, you block them. If not, you know where the next thing is, whether it's further down the line of scrimmage or to the linebacker level. So if our players can have really good technique and they can follow their rules, then it's fairly – I say fairly easy because nothing's easy when things are moving super fast, right? But it's fairly easy with practice for us to sort out. They've got to end up somewhere. There's going to be 6 gaps on line of scrimmage, A, B, and C gaps on both sides of the football, and they're going to have 6 guys that in some combination they end up in those 6 gaps. They made whatever they do, so we just have to make sure we block those 6 gaps.
Okay, now when you're playing a team like Austin College, which you have recent familiarity with, but less so in the last few seasons, is it more difficult to prepare for a team like that? Because, looking at what you did in 2016, there's a whole new set of personnel on that side of the football as well as on your side of the football. Talk about that a little bit. How do you prepare for a team like that where you kind of feel familiar, but it's a whole new set of guys? And as you mentioned, they even changed their offense recently.
It's a whole new set of players, so it's a completely fresh look. But they have a lot of the same coaches. So you can always go back to your memory bank and say, well, this is kind of their overall style. We've seen them react this way to these type of things. Because you can still see the Kangaroo football, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their brand. Even though we haven't played them in a while, there's still a lot of things in the way that they play that's still pretty familiar. They haven't changed all their schemes. There's some things that are just kind of embedded in how they do things and the techniques that they play. So we do have, that's why the familiarity is not there for our players at all. None of them have played against Austin College before, but a lot of our coaches, kind of have some things in the back of their mind of we've seen this before, we've seen that before. But they'll have the same thing because, again, our coaches are the same as well. So they'll be able to recall some things that they may have learned. Now, going back and watching a game from 2016, again, won't do you any good because all the players are completely different. But there's still the familiarity probably helps both coaching staffs a little bit.
Well, and you've changed your offense just for this season from the last several seasons, correct? You mentioned previously you're running a run and shoot, and it's a little bit different than what you've run in the past. So how does that affect the way that they might prepare for you, and how does that affect your delivery of some potential surprises? You don't have to reveal what those may be, but
well, yeah. Last time we played them, we were very different. We were a headache. We had a spread offense with Brian Hicks, who went on to play 5 years of professional quarterback in Arena, and we had Fred Hover, who was an option expert. So they had to prepare for 2. They were both all conference in 1 year.
Right.
So they had to prepare for 2 really good offensive systems. And so it was a lot for them to prepare for. So probably of all the phases, our offense will be the most different than what they've seen. And they may have the least amount of recall. There's still some common threads in how we play defense. And as I said, you can see the common threads in their offense and defense. But, yeah, probably our offense and the things we're doing with our current players are quite a bit different than what they saw the last time we played.
Well, Coach, do you have any final thoughts that you want to mention about the upcoming game, something you want to relay to your players that maybe you haven't already, or that you just want to reiterate that you've already mentioned to them?
Well, probably more for our fans to get ready for what we're doing with this home game. It's St. David's Day, and our guest coach will be Hugh Brown, the CEO of St. David's Georgetown Hospital. And we just want to thank all the folks at St. David's. They've been kind of busy for the last couple of years.
Yes, they have.
And in fact, Hugh didn't know as the CEO if he would even be, what the pandemic situation would be, if he could even break away to come to the football game. But his schedule is good. He's going to be able to make it. And we're offering tickets. They have them in hand for all their employees to come and just kind of decompress and enjoy some football. So we'll be celebrating them this Saturday. And Antioch Georgetown is going to host a trunk or treat at tailgating.
Oh, okay.
And so they're going to have some cars out there and some candy. And so folks want to come out and enjoy trunk or treat and then come to the football game. It'll be a good afternoon. The weather's supposed to be pretty much ideal, it looks like.
So are you encouraging costumes?
Yeah, for sure.
For adults as well as children, or just the children?
for older children and younger children alike.
Well, good, because I think I might have to find a costume in there somewhere. I know there have been a couple of folks that have attended or regularly these SU football weeklies that plan on trying to dress as Coach Austin.
Yeah, so if you see someone dressed as me, make sure you know if it's me or not. and I take no responsibility for what Bob Wilson might say on my behalf.
For their actions. That's right. Okay, Coach. Well, it was a great show tonight. I appreciate your time. Thank everyone for listening to SU Football Weekly, presented by the Sheraton Austin Georgetown Hotel and Conference Center. Make sure you come out on Saturday for the game against the Austin College Kangaroos. We'll see you next time.